I guess we surprised you. This is completely not the plan. It was to be a side door entrance, all very discreet, and we were completely disrupted by the well-loved disruptor. To everyone gathered here tonight and to those joining us online, good evening, molweni, sabubona, dumelang, assalamu alaikum, goeienaand, and bunasera. I'm Penny Parenzee, and on behalf of the Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance and the many units within departments and faculties across this university, I'm privileged to be welcoming Ms. Francesca Albanese to this gathering. To all of those gathering from all the clapping, I assume you need no introduction to Francesca Albanese. For all of us following the debates and discussions on Palestine, she's really been an anchor. She's the UN Special Rapporteur on the Occupied Palestinian Territories. She has impeccable academic and professional credentials. Yet, among all of her achievements, what resonates most at this time is her courage, her unwavering compassion, her empathy, and her humanity. Francesca Albanese has been an unrelenting voice, calling us to account for how we respond and act against colonial oppression, domination, segregation, and the erasure of a people. Her voice has grown louder, more fearless with each day that we witness the genocide carried out against the Palestinian people. The clarity of perspective of a deeply rooted, brutal colonial settler agenda and its workings in the world today is captured in her recently released report at the UN General Assembly titled, From Economy of Occupation to Economy of Genocide. A golden thread in the lectures and discussions that have taken place in the past few days in South Africa has drawn from this analysis, asking hard questions related to complicity and our collective power to act. And this evening, the conversation asks these hard questions of academia under the title, Liberation and the Academy, the Role of Universities in the Struggle for Palestine. Francesca Albanese, a warm welcome to the University of Cape Town. We hold this meeting in this hall renamed the Sarah Baartman Hall, which represents an honoring of the humanity and resilience of Sarah Baartman, a Khoisan woman enslaved, dehumanized under a colonial system. We hold this meeting on this campus, remembering that access to academic institutions and critiques of colonial knowledge systems were born out of struggles. And Archie Mafeje, a Black academic, symbolized the struggle for Black students and academics to be given equal access to universities. He studied at UCT, was an excellent scholar, yet denied a teaching post because of apartheid-era racism, sparking anti-apartheid protests. Academia has a fundamental role to play in how we understand the world and how we shape a more humane one. In the words of Nelson Mandela, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And let us be reminded also of the wisdom of Nelson Mandela, that in extending our hands across the miles to the people of Palestine, we do so in the full knowledge that we are part of a humanity that is at one. In partnership with the Nelson Mandela Foundation, the Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance, and the many UCT departments, centers, units, we are proud to host you here today. The world needs more Francesca Albanese, more of us. More of us who emulate how you lead fearlessly, speak truth to power and the world to regain our humanity by doing what is right and socially just. The program this evening, which I hope will keep us all on the edge of our seats, will be structured as follows. We'll have a panel discussion, and you'll see the panelists up here. Suren Pillay, who is a professor and director at the Center of African Studies, will moderate the session. We'll have that followed with a chance for questions and comments from the floor, and that moderation will be by Leanne Naidu, who is in the School of Education. As in all the ceremonies you've seen and conversations that Francesca has held so far, there's always a gift giving, so we could not be outdone. We also have a gifting ceremony, which will be led by Fatima Hendricks and Bashira Sumar. And then we'll have an expression of thanks by the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Mbongaseni Buthelezi, as well as the Chair of Council, Advocate Norman Arendse. Before we move to this part, this exciting conversation, I'm unfortunately in the position of having to do housekeeping. So 2 things on the housekeeping. If you're absolutely desperate and need to slip away from this conversation because bodily functions don't allow us to not, on the right, on my right or your left at the back, there are bathroom facilities. And if you go through that door and there's none that's occupied, there are also on the buildings to this right of this one. And then please, can you switch your phones on silent? I'm not stopping photos, but we don't want buzzes of hip-hop songs playing while we listen to the conversation. So Suren Pillay, Director of the Center of African Studies, I hand over to you to introduce and moderate this amazing panel. Can the AV assist with switching on the mic?
It is on, you can hear me. Great. Thank you, Penny. And welcome to all of you to this panel. My role here is very easy this evening because I just have to pose a few questions to our guests, and I know you're all waiting anxiously to hear from them. So let me introduce them. You already know, and we've been given permission to dispense with the usual protocols and formalities, so I will refer to everyone by their first name, and you already are familiar with Francesca Albanese. But our other guests, we were delighted to have with us this evening, Professor Haidar, who is an associate professor of literature. I'm glad you like literature so much, but I want to say he is a professor of literature at Al-Aqsa University, which is very important to say, and cultural studies, and a research associate at the Center for Asian Studies in Africa at the University of Pretoria. We have with us also this evening Professor Nomusa Makhubu, who I'm delighted to say is a colleague here at UCT, the director. Nomusa is the director of the Institute for Creative Arts in the Faculty of Humanities. And we have, again, our dear colleague, Professor Leslie London, the head of public health medicine here in the Faculty of Health Sciences at UCT. So welcome. I'm gonna start by asking a question to Francesca related to the latest, the report that was earlier referred to on the economy of genocide. And what was, of course, striking, and I think many of you have read it, was the way in which the report reveals how a kind of entire corporate machinery sustains and finances the state of Israel, and by extension, of course, its military campaigns. And you point, I think, with great clarity and depth in the report to the scale of that support, both, I think, as it relates overtly to an arms industry, but also in the complex webs that relate technology and seemingly benign research and finance, hedge funds and other pension funds into greening the economy, into public health issues, advances in technology in relation to medicine. And those, of course, are the multiple ways in which I think we in the university find our colleagues and ourselves inadvertently participating in research networks or in funding arrangements that have, in the current conjuncture, the consequence of legitimating a state that is committing crimes against humanity. So I'd like to just invite you to talk more to that report and what you think scholars can do in the context of, I think, a kind of window that you're opening up, but I imagine a lot more work needs to be done from a kind of research perspective.
Okay, yes. First of all, Moloweni, Sambona, Dumelang. At least let me show some good manners, given the very warm welcome that I received. That makes me feel so anxious right now because I need to deliver. I need to deserve all this affection. But I really thank you. This place has made me feel embraced. South Africa in general, not just this campus. And it's also a privilege and an honor to be with you all, those who are with me on the panel, those who are sitting, including my friends at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, who are the ones, in fact, who deserve a big applause because they're the ones who persistently made sure that I came here. Thank you. And also, I feel so relieved to have Professor Haidar with us, because at least for once, I will not be the one having to talk about Gaza. Every time I do, something in my heart pierces. And I do that with a sense of dignity, hoping that every time I talk about the people who's been genocided, I manage to keep respect for them without reducing only to numbers, to dry statistics, even if it's monstrous that in the face of the numbers that we have, 20,000 children, and not because their mothers and their fathers do not count, but there is something brutal about seeing the list of how many 3 months old, 4 months old, 6 months old, 1-year-old children have disappeared from Earth. So for once, I will not be the one giving the details of the genocide. He comes from Gaza, and so he's a genocide survivor himself. But I will try to focus exclusively on the legal aspects of what's happening. So going to the question, first of all, let me situate briefly what is my role. For those of you who know me, without knowing, though, why I do what I do with the energy and strength I do that. Because sometimes I'm told, oh, you are more Palestinians than Palestinians. No. Don't make many mistakes. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not pretending to be a Palestinian. And frankly, you don't need to be Palestinian to stand against this monstrosity. I'm a human being like you, and a decent human being, but I'm also a European who's very cognizant of what we have done as Europe, without forgetting also of how much suffering has been inflicted on indigenous people in Europe before the system that had subjugated so many in the continent turned into the settler colonial enterprise that has scarred this continent after Latin America and Asia. But I'm cognizant of what we have done, the colonial crimes that we have committed and the colonial crimes that we have brought to Europe. Because what we have done to the Jewish people, the Roma and Sinti, and anyone who was not conforming with a pure race, was exactly inflicting upon them the dehumanization and the extermination tactics that the Germans and its colonial their colonial friends had been practicing on the body and soul of so many colonized people. So today I say we can and must be different. This is why I do what I do. I'm a special rapporteur of the United Nations, so I do I'm a voice, I'm an observer, I'm someone who looks at, should document and report on the human rights violations of international law taking place in the occupied Palestinian territory. And this was the one you referred to, from economy of occupation to an economy of genocide. Was my 6th report. Just for information, I've just published a new report, my 7th, which complements that the economy of occupation, economy of genocide, and if you want, we can talk about that later. I will be presenting this not from New York, as usual, but from here, from Cape Town. And I don't think that I could have been in a better and more symbolic place than this one. But however, part of this report, Economy of Occupation, Economy of Genocide, could have been written decades ago, right? Because here's what it is. I've documented how Israel has utilized the private sector, which is not just businesses. It includes arms manufacturers, civilian equipment producers like heavy machinery, like Caterpillar, those excavators, etc. Surveillance techniques and devices like fences and CCTVs, etc. to displace and dispossess the Palestinians. So these tools produced by the private sector have been used actually to cleanse the land. You needed force, you needed weapons, you needed gates and walls to confine, to segregate the population, and then you needed more weapons to control them and to make sure that they didn't leave the space given to them, right? That they didn't complain when you uprooted their trees or demolished their homes. So this is the first pillar of the economy of the occupation. The displacement of the Palestinians has happened by using these businesses and by making these businesses profitable. And the second pillar is the replacement. As in any good settler colonial enterprise, after displacing the indigenous people have been replaced. Where once there were the orchards and villages, now there are colonies. Colonies after colonies after colonies, now there are over 300 and growing by the day, in fact. And then the colonies built on the land that was stolen from the Palestinians had to be connected to each other, had to be provided with utilities, so energy grids, water pipes, roads, and all this has been built around the Palestinians. There are, just in the West Bank, 400 kilometers of segregated roads. Then it's just they are not accessible to the Palestinians. They help to confine the Palestinians, to encircle them, to prevent them from living where they have been confined. And so, and construction companies, service productions or agricultural services, water-related services, tourism companies have all been engaged, real estate. There is not one business that comes to mind that has not been involved. So I've put together a tale of the sectors and named 48 entities, together with the last layer of all this. I say, all this system of displacement and replacement would have not happened without the enablers. Who are the enablers? Universities, research centers, banks, pension funds, who have provided the means, the tools, the normalization, that veneer of legitimacy, because universities, look at just one example, there are most of the universities, especially those in scientific, technological areas, are invested in the military industry. Let's not pretend that we don't know or we are not aware of it. But even when they don't, and I've met many dozens over this year only. They say, yeah, but we do neutral research. We do neutral research because we just invest on water. Well, you're wrong, my friends, because water in Palestine is one of the most contested and one of the, actually it's not the right word, is one of the most obvious pieces of evidence of Israel's apartheid. Because the water, even when it's in the West Bank, which is a water-rich area, it's taken from the Palestinians, redistributed through one distribution grid by Israel. The profits go through to Israel, and in fact, this is how it was so easy to leave Gaza without water. Because Israel held control over the water like on anything else. So there is nothing neutral when you research on water or when you research on agriculture, and that is it. So pension funds have been investing. The Norwegian pension fund, I was horrified throughout the years, because this is what triggered my interest in having this report. How it's possible that Norway, one of the best friends of Palestine in Europe, invests 10% of its sovereign fund, which is, they are an oil-rich country. They sell oil, and after the Ukraine-Russia war, they've been selling even more oil, so accumulating a lot of profits that then have been distributed in form of pensions or interest to the population. Now, this is a very, very, very big pension fund, and 10% of this fund, I found, that was invested in only 40 of the businesses that I had investigated. So imagine all the others, because I've collected information around 1,000 entities. But then I didn't have the capacity to do more than 48. And then I was saying, but you are sponsoring these businesses, and the answer was, yes, but they're just producing vegetables. Yeah, on the land that they have stolen. Would you like to have the Danes? I was asking the Norwegian, would you like to have the Danes coming here, kicking you out and planting your land and then selling you for a high price your tomatoes? And the answer was, of course, no. But this is the thing. So the last point I wanted to make is that it's the point that makes this report so special, and I wouldn't have been able to write it before the genocide, is while I know that the businesses implicated in the illegality of the occupation were already acting against international law, and so they should have been reprimanded, recalled, investigated, and if found guilty, prosecuted for possible involvement in crimes before October 7, because as a business, legally, you cannot be connected to or contribute to a violation, an international law violation, like the illegality of the occupation or pillaging natural resources. You cannot contribute to, you cannot cause human rights impact, and clearly all businesses did. However, after October 7, not only these businesses have ignored all the warnings, the ICJ provisional measures, the amounting evidence that Israel was committing war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Not only they've stayed involved, the companies I have mentioned in the report, they've continued to, they have raised their profits. And don't forget this, during a time where the Israeli economy was nosediving, and the banks and pension funds and had to really to place Israel at the center of their interest in order to grant credit toward Israel. So the banks have been critical in protecting Israeli economy. The Israeli stock exchange during the genocide has amassed $220 billion, and it has grown of 213%. And this is where I want to end. Israel has been making profits together with these businesses that I mentioned and others that the BDS mentions, while slaughtering Palestinians and destroying Gaza.
Thank you. Thanks. I think there's a striking way in which one recalls a formulation by a scholar who obviously wrote the famous book, The Banality of Evil, but the way we also come to understand this is that there's certain kinds of benevolence that also does work in the favor of crimes against humanity in this particular context. I want to turn to Haidar, and it's a great honor to have you with us to talk firsthand about the experience of you and your colleagues at Al-Aqsa University. And I would like to invite you to reflect on that, particularly because I read in an interview, where you describe so vividly that you were a certain person before October 7th and another person after, and I'd like you to talk to us about that, what that means to you. But also, in a kind of larger context, as we think about the role of universities and scholars and students, is what October 7th has done, not just inside of Palestine or Gaza or the occupied territories, but also globally. And at the same time that we've seen this destruction, we read about the shifting public opinions of youth, for example, in US universities, where the polls are showing that increasingly young people are not supporting Israel as a Zionist project for the first time. So we have these two developments in the world in a way, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks.
Thank you. I only have 10 minutes to answer that question. I just want to start by saying that, I'm so happy to be here again in Cape Town, talking to you. And I'm also honored to be sharing this platform with these great people. They are role models, and they have been role models for a while. But before I start answering this question, and I have made it absolutely clear to all people, non-Palestinians, that whenever I start a talk, I start by paying tribute, first of all, to 38 colleagues of mine from Al-Aqsa University who have been killed by genocidal Israel. And I want also to pay tribute to 288 students of Al-Aqsa University, including some of my own students who have also been killed by apartheid Israel. I don't want to start by talking about numbers because we are not numbers. We are not numbers. And I need to repeat that because now people are getting used to these numbers. 60,000 people have been killed by apartheid, 70,000 people, 80,000 people. The Lancet reported that, more than 377,000 people. Well, but I can, since the question is about me, and I don't like to talk about myself, but, being an academic, and the reason why I'm here in South Africa is not because I wanted to leave Palestine. It's not because I wanted to leave Gaza. Because I know very well for a fact that I'm supposed to be dead. And I'm not saying this trying to use sort of emotive language. No, I know for a fact that I'm supposed to be dead because many of my comrades and colleagues have been killed, including, and I would mention some of the names some of you are familiar with, including Professor Rafat al-Arghair, the famous Palestinian poet who was a close friend of mine, a colleague of mine, and I remember very well when it was on the day when I, together with my family, we were evacuated by the South African government from Rafah in Gaza. In fact, I have lost so far 54 of my cousins. Whole families have been wiped out. I've lost my own flat. I've lost my family home. In fact, I have no home to go back to. And this is nothing compared to the sacrifices made by other people in Gaza. 90% of Gaza's houses and buildings have been destroyed. 100% of Rafah houses have been destroyed. Beit Hanun, Beit Lahia, Jabalia, people who know Gaza know what I'm talking about. Gaza has been turned, and I'm going to use the language used by some Israelis. They wanted to turn Gaza into a parking lot. Erase Gaza from the face of the earth. And well, as an academic, and I remember very well, on the 27th of December, 2008, I was driving my car at 11:25 a.m., and I had passed by the police headquarters in Gaza. 5 minutes after that, I had a huge explosion. Huge explosion. Within 3 minutes, they had killed 270 people. Massive aerial strikes from Rafah in the south to Beit Hanun in the north. And that lasted for 18 days, killing more than 1,400 people. And I always say it, we Palestinians are naive because we thought the international community, and I'm answering now the question, would do something. And 3 years before that, we had issued our BDS call. I am one of the co-founders of the BDS movement. 2005, we issued a statement calling on the international community after learning from the South African experience, calling on the international community to boycott apartheid Israel. Of course, we were not allowed even to say apartheid Israel. Israel is not an apartheid state. Everybody, even some of our supporters, didn't want to use the term apartheid. Now, everybody knows that Israel is apartheid. There is a consensus amongst human rights organizations and activists, from B'Tselem of Israel to Amnesty International to Human Rights Watch to the United Nations itself, calling Israel an apartheid state. And now everybody agrees that Israel is committing the crime of all crimes, the mother of crimes in Gaza. But let me go back again. After 2009, the international community did absolutely nothing. In fact, they blamed both sides. They blamed the colonizer and the colonized. They blamed the victims. Comes 2012, the same thing happens again. Well, they say history doesn't repeat itself, but if it does, it repeats itself as either as a tragedy or a farce. And in Palestine, it's both, tragedy and a farce. 2012, I was driving my car from our Khan Yunis campus, what used to be our campus, to Gaza, where I live, and the same thing happened again. For a week, apartheid Israel launched a massive attack, killing 200 people, including 67 children. And what was the reaction of the international community? We academics issued statements at the time, calling at least on our colleagues to boycott Israeli academic institutions due to their complicity, and I would say now, not complicity, direct participation in Israel's violations of our basic rights. Nothing happened. 2014, for 51 days, and I was there, and I remember the South African representative office calling me from Ramallah, asking me if I wanted to leave, and I said no. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave because I didn't have kids at the time. 51 days killing more than 2,400 people, including more than 660 children. I also took part in the Great March of Return. I lost some of my best students. We were blamed. So we tried BDS. We've tried civil disobedience, non-violence. Still, the official bodies of the international community blamed us. I was there, 5 massacres until the beginning of this genocide. And at the beginning of the genocide, I remember very well early in the morning when 7th of October took place, the events, etc., we never thought that Israel would commit a genocide. And honestly, people keep asking me, I mean, what's happening in Gaza? Because people can't understand, can't fathom, I mean, the meaning of genocide. I mean, I remember every single cousin of mine that has died. Their children, and they're gone, like that. Gaza, as we know it, is no longer there. And therefore, I think there is, I really don't want to even call it even an ethical responsibility. If you're a human being, do you really want that to go on? And I'm telling you, it is happening as we are speaking right now. Forget about the farce called Trump's plan for Gaza. Nothing is happening, absolutely nothing. Yesterday, before I flew, I decided to contact actually the Ministry of Education because I knew that I was going to answer that question. And I asked them about, you know, the latest figures. I mean, how many professors, teachers, academics, students have died? I myself honestly, I was shocked. I mean, the answer I got is more than 20,000 students. And we are not numbers. This is from the Ministry of Education. More than 20,000 students and 1,073 teachers have been killed over the last 2 years. Have been martyred since, this is their answer, since the beginning of the aggression. The number of students martyred in Gaza alone since the beginning of the genocide has reached more than 19,910. I remember on the, actually 1 week before I left Gaza, I was on the phone with one of my best students who had graduated, became a BDS activist, used to contact me almost every day, fell in love with another student of mine, they got married, they had 2 children. 3 hours after that phone call, he was killed, his wife was killed, his children were killed. Khalil Abu Yahya, his name. Reem al-Farra, another student of mine, extremely brilliant student. She had just gotten a scholarship to further her studies at SOAS in the UK. Straight A's, straight A's. She got engaged 1 week before she was, before she was decided to leave Gaza. She was killed together with her family. Last month, Aya Siyam from the Nusayrat refugee camp where I was born and where my parents died in 2005, together with her parents and her 2 siblings, were killed. So the question now, and I will try to finish, I know I'm going on. We are hopeless. I must say that. I can't say that, you know, we can see hope, we can see light at the end of the tunnel. But with people like my sister, my comrade Francesca, we can see light at the end of the tunnel. With your support, we can see light at the end of the tunnel. With South Africa taking a bold step, taking apartheid Israel, to the ICJ, yes, we have hope. Hence the importance of BDS. And I don't want to spoil the party, but I have 2 questions. One, why is South Africa, why is it still exporting coal to apartheid Israel? And the second question, why is South Africa allowing South African mercenaries to commit war crimes in Gaza?
Thank you, Haidar. And it's so important to hear the stories of colleagues and to name them in a way, because words or concepts like educide that I know we talk about sometimes lose the kind of vividness of the loss of life, of lives and individual lives. I'm going to turn to Francesca for a follow-up question. And it's in relation to the report. I know there's the latest one, but the one on that's titled Genocide as Colonial Erasure. And because I think what is striking in the kind of this violence and the scale of it that you're talking about, the disbelief almost that you describe, is that your report identifies in a way that what we are seeing is the means to an end, that there's a longer political ambition that's playing out, the full colonization of Palestinian lands and the removal or the displacement and replacement, as you call it, of Palestinians. That the devastation inflicted in Gaza, as the report said, is now is spreading, or their ambitions to spread to the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. And at the same time, we've just seen this vote in the Knesset recently regarding annexation, in support of annexation. And at the same time, these reports that we are seeing out of the White House from the Deputy President, from J.D. Vance, from Marco Rubio, saying that they won't allow annexation. So perhaps just help us make sense of how you see these dynamics playing out against this longer history, which I clearly identify as the settler colonial ambition in a way that makes almost the situation slightly so different to South Africa, was that this is an attempt to, from the beginning, always erase the people from the land, rather than have to live with them or exploit them as labor. Thank you.
Well, I think let me go straight to the point you raised. What do we make of the words spoken by these politicians and the facts on the ground? These politicians lie, and the facts don't. So let's look at the facts. So first of all, the annexation of the West Bank, like the annexation of what remains of Palestine, has been ongoing since 1967. 57 years of military presence have served as a vehicle to dispossess the Palestinians, as I was saying, to segregate them, to build the continuation of Israel. Because, there is, I don't know how it is in South Africa, but surely in the part of the world I come from, there is this fiction that there is a good Israel inside Israel, and in fact it's called like Israel proper. There is nothing proper attached to Israel, because there is nothing proper with an apartheid state. However, there is a good Israel and a bad Israel in the colonies. It's Israel's crimes. Whatever happens, whatever has been happening as of 1967 in Gaza, the West Bank and East Jerusalem, is criminal, and it's progressive annexation. So it's not something that started a few days ago. Because in fact, if we have to be very, very specific, and we like written documents, in February 2023, the current government, the government coalition, 3 or 4 months after having been sworn in, signed an agreement. There was an annexation because it passed, this agreement passed control over large swathes of the I keep on saying World Bank, of the West Bank to the under the control of the Minister of Finance, Bezalel Smotrich. And this is de jure annexation. So it was, this was the formalization of something that had already been happening in practice, right? But the thing is that Gaza, what we call Gaza Strip, I stopped using strip because even that is part of the colonization, of the colonial mentality, of dividing, creating these artificial entities. I mean, Gaza, pre-Israel, was a region, was part of the southern part of Palestine. It became the strip the moment Israel was created. And that strip has always been, since 1948, the largest Palestinian refugee camp. Because since 1948, I mean, the population changed, if I remember correctly, from 75,000 people to over 200,000. And so the population has grown, and Gaza has always been isolated. Why? Because it was a demographic nightmare for the Israelis. What are we going to do with all these people? There now are 2,300,000. On the other side, though, there were less. Jerusalem has been annexed since the 1980s. And the United Nations have declared this act null and void. Has it stopped anything? No, rather the contrary. And so incrementally, with every colony after colony after colony, now there are, as I said, the 300 for 800,000 Israelis. This is how the annexation has happened. So it's not something, it's criminality in the making. And this is why today, what do we make of it? That it is to stop. Because the genocide, and I agree with you, this genocide is a textbook case of genocide, as Professor Ras Sigal said in the very first hours of the genocide. And to be honest, this professor, he's an Israeli professor who has left Israel, but already in February 2023, he called me and he said, well, I understand you're the UN Special Rapporteur. Why are you not investigating the genocide? And I was like, what genocide? Because I didn't know. I hadn't understood what the genocide is, because we confuse the means with intent. Now we see what is a settler colonial genocide. Where genocide, the motives do not matter. I don't know, but in, again, my part of the world, over and over, and here, even now we hear, no, but Israel, doesn't want to kill them all. It only wants to eradicate Hamas. Before they used to say, liberate the hostages. Now the hostages are free, and they would have been freed on the third day after October 7, because this is, and one day history will be hopefully recounted properly, chronologically. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what are the motives. The moment there is the determination to destroy a people as such through acts of killing, but also creating the conditions of life calculated that would lead to the destruction, like leaving people without food, without water, without electricity, or even telling people, move, telling 1.1 million people, you have 24 hours to move from zone A, B, C, D to zone F, G, H, I. Without telling people what these zones would be, sending maps that are mental, that are made to make people feel lost while also carpet bombing their land. You know that the reason why in the beginning of the genocide you had 150, 200 people killed daily, and this was not even the deadliest days of the genocide, because in March 2020 of this year, when Israel broke the ceasefire, it killed 600 people in one day, in 24 hours, while also destroying 23 in the same hours, destroying buildings in the West Bank. It's been an attack against the population as such, destroying a people as such, through acts of killing, creation of conditions of life, infliction of severe mental or psychological or physical suffering, or preventing births. Why bombing the fertility clinic, which was storing 4,000 embryos or 5,000 embryos? Why? Why destroying all universities? Not destroying, raiding, leveling to the ground. 8 out of 9 houses have been destroyed. Why? Why all churches? Why the places that were the site of the symbols of Palestinian identity? Why the museums? Why the zoo? Why everything? Why all livelihoods, all farming land? the fishing fleet. Why? Because they had to destroy the possibility to have life. And this is it, and this is genocide. It's not the means, it's not the trains through which that you use to take people to concentration camps, it's not the machetes, no. It's not the means, it's the fact, the determination to destroy a people as such, doctors, students, professors, it doesn't matter who they are. As long as you are Palestinian, you are killable and you are destroyable. And who cares about you? We can even laugh about you. And this is the genocidal society that the West continues to defend. Because this, if you look at the polls, over 62% of the Israeli societies continue to demand that the Palestinians from Gaza be forced to leave. They don't want to live. It's them who do not want to live with the Palestinians. It's them who ask for the demilitarization of the people who have been genocided, and the West goes along. So this is why, I mean, this is a transformative moment where either we stand together and we object and reject all these. Otherwise, what has been experimented in Gaza, this is my fear, it's going just to be a new set of strategies and techniques of mass containment. And it's going sooner or later going to hit us too or hit us all.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to turn now to my colleagues, Nomusa and Leslie. And I know you've both been grappling with this idea, and I think we all have, with what is our responsibility once we know, and we are quite clearly in a position to say that nobody doesn't know, or few people don't know. And from your position as scholars in the university, I'll ask each of you just to talk about, one, your experience in relation to the kind of work that you've been doing to take up this responsibility within the university. And mindful that we are not necessarily in the North American context or even in Germany, where we do see the way in which academic freedom has really been constricted. What hindrances or challenges have you both faced in that regard? But also, what gains do you think have been made in the institutions on these questions? And then lastly, I think the second part of that question is to ask you in relation to this question of responsibility is it's quite clear that we feel a responsibility to act, to do something now, but it's also in a way quite clear that there are things happening. The level of dehumanization of Palestinians is part of a longer history in which people have been dehumanized in the way we think about them. And do we as scholars in the university, what can we do as part of that project to rehumanize the people that colonial histories have historically dehumanized? Because it seems to me that there are things that are happening now to Palestinian women and children, for example, that are part of that history, that they can be thought of in that way to do these things. So, Nomusa.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. It is always so difficult to hear these facts, but we must hear them. In terms of our own universities here, we've all seen and we know that one of the main tactics that are used to suppress the struggle for Palestine is the threat to withdraw donor funding. These are the hindrances, as you've asked. This threat has revealed a Janus-faced disposition, a contradiction between carving an image of having institutional values of integrity, humanity, responsiveness, while being bound by the loyalties to the same big corporations and donors that create the conditions of injustice. The growth of the mining industry, for example, which is the heart of apartheid capitalism, which has driven massive land dispossession and labor exploitation. But it's also deeply tied with the Israelis' diamond history. And of course, if we come close to home, we've seen how these capitalist networks, which include Israel, continue to be at the foundation of most historically white South African tertiary institutions. Our library, which is next to this very building that we're in, is still named after Chancellor Harry Oppenheimer, who supplied rough diamonds to Israel. There's a Harry Oppenheimer Diamond Museum in Ramat Gan in Israel. Diamonds are still one of Israel's biggest exports. Am I correct? Yes? And Oppenheimer played a key role in that. We still have Chancellor Oppenheimer, which is located strangely next to Sarah Baartman. Remember also that early this year, and I think this is something you've also mentioned, BDS was campaigning to get Africa Rainbow Minerals to stop selling coal through Glencore to Israel. And remember, ARM gives bursaries to UCT. So these histories of these relationships are painfully present and cry out for further research and for our university to examine critically. It is telling also that while we were all witnessing the cruel and continuing bombardment in Gaza, some were arguing that universities should not take sides in divisive conflicts. You'll remember this. And that we should resist the pressure to make official statements on the matter to preserve academic integrity in the face of polarizing global events. So then what is academic integrity if it means being silent when we see injustice? The complicity of universities is widely known, and it is long-standing. Unfortunately, the relationships between universities and capital, large corporates, have a built-in compromise of justice-oriented freedom and autonomy. Note also that I've not said academic freedom because even this notion is controversial and has been used for liberal arguments. Arguably, it is these very relationships that immobilize universities from acting meaningfully in the face of human tragedy, in the face of genocide. The compromise has meant that universities are in a stasis because while pursuing economically determined targets and commercialized research, they are generally unable to move forward towards the ideals of justice. Stasis is the reason there was an upsurge of fallism in 2015. The words we used then were rupture and disruption. These were interventions that were necessary to destabilize the unchanging apartheid conditions and institutional cultures of indifference and apathy to the habitual loss of marginalized lives. Even in 2015, these threats of funding withdrawal were used to create an atmosphere of paralyzing fear. If we consider, for example, the pressure to issue interdicts leading to the arrest of protesting students in those years, private funding withdrawal has been used to silence progressive scholars in the university and to incite fear and even worse, lead many to self-censorship. In most cases, universities have construed systems of isolating and alienating individuals, as Lauren Belant and Sarah Ahmed expose in their work on complaint. Alienation and increased surveillance silences and forces individuals in universities into struggles for survival. And then to come to the question about the positive achievements, and I think, the point that you raised about the fact that there is hope, Francesca's work, there's hope. Academic boycotts present that slither of hope. Fortunately, universities, the composition of universities has changed, and I believe this helps shape institutional decisions. I sit here in awe of colleagues in this room who were instrumental in ensuring that the university's Senate adopts motions to boycott. Colleagues who have kept the discursive platforms alive because we must keep talking. We must keep talking about Gaza. We must keep talking about genocide. We must keep talking about apartheid. So in terms of what we've personally done this year, we, as the Creative Knowledge Resources, we welcomed and have been hosting a Palestinian artist, May Al-Shayer, who now has an exhibition on display in the galleries at the Art Campus. she also got to meet the artist Tanya Peterson to guide her towards her creative process. And then finally, to respond to the question about what is our responsibility. We should hold our institutions accountable and hold the private sector accountable, especially since they have such deep networks and institutions. 2, we should work with and host Palestinian scholars, artists, etc., as South Africans were received in exile across the world. We should work towards pooling resources and address the dependency to the private sector, which often happens when you have a parasitic state, as we do. We must be part of the class struggle. We must become aware of the class dimensions of this. Universities sustain the allure of bourgeois life, which feeds the capitalist machine. So as scholars, we need to see ourselves as accountable, not to the narrow interests of institutions, but to global political commitments to social justice. This is also a global struggle, as has been mentioned, in which scholars have a role to play, so that decades from now, there's an honest and sincere picture of what has been happening. There is power in intellectual work and scholarly intervention. The intellectual battle is still ahead. We are still to see the generational impact of the past 2 years, the last 7 decades, as we apply our minds to Palestine, so we should to genocidal capitalism in its current phase. And this leads me to my final point. We need to put our energies to the ongoing intergenerational work through open teaching and archiving. If all of these institutions have been destroyed, they need to exist everywhere in the world. As it is known, this is also a battle for the mind. Generations to come should know what happened. They should learn to recognize the truth from the lies, should be able to see and understand the inner workings of global settler colonialism and not accept the conditions of their displacement. Because we have seen what can happen when younger generations grow up to believe that they should work hard to buy back that which was stolen from them. We should be committed to radical education, as my colleagues here have been, and as they exemplify in their everyday work. We should also be committed to the cause for reparation. It has been a struggle here in South Africa, but I think the strengthened progressive global networks are key. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nomusa. And one is reminded always of, Edward Said's injunction that Palestinians are not just reducible to their religious identity or their victimhood. They are the inheritors of an extraordinary civilization, and we have a responsibility as scholars to teach that in a way. Leslie. Yeah.
So thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to respond, and thank you so much to be on the panel. I teach a course in public health and human rights at this university in a master's program, and it's a course that explores the utility and limits of rights in trying to challenge power inequality in health and other areas. And it locates power at the center of the problem of how the world is not working. In the reflections on the course over the last 2 years, the students have all in their journals and in the class, they've all reflected on what is obvious to them, that there is a genocide going on in Gaza. I don't have to teach it, they see it. And that's the way it should be, because we are training students to be critical, to be global citizens. And as Francesca said yesterday, genocide in Gaza is memory in the making for young people. And these are the people we teach. So that to me is hope for the future. So you'd think the university would want to build on that in a way that affirms and enables critical citizenship. And indeed, in our university, there is a vision a document which says, our university will offer a transformative and socially engaged undergraduate and postgraduate education, enabling our graduates to use their knowledge, skill, and sense of responsibility to shape and be at the service of society, locally and globally. UCT will distinguish itself by thought leadership on social justice, and our graduates will be global citizens who are actively responsible for a world they have inherited and who will leave the world leave a better world for future generations. So, what is the record of our universities? It's very varied. So we have universities in South Africa that have openly come out condemning a genocide, and we have other universities that have said nothing or in fact suppressed discussion. And I have colleagues in this audience with whom I sympathize deeply for being in universities where they can't move to say a word. Here at UCT, we have contested spaces and we use them. So what do you do when your colleagues tell you you're being divisive? Do you shut up? Do you stop teaching difficult things? No, you don't. What do you do when you're told that matters such as genocide in Gaza are not matters fit for academic discussion in your Senate to debate and issue opinions on? You don't shut up. And what do you do when you are threatened that your resolution will cost the university millions? And even more extreme, your colleagues take the university to court to overturn a public statement that the council has adopted. So if we are to teach in ways that meet the goals of an African university, which is committed to challenging power, you cannot stay silent. And your challenge is also to the power that is integral to what the university determines is what it rewards and what it permits. So we're also challenging power within the university when we do that. And as we have heard, it's also about the money, right? And we've seen universities, particularly in the US, but not only in the US, caving in to financial pressures. And of course, we know that that pressure has existed at UCT and has appeared in claims in the press and in the court. But here's the funny thing. Not only is there weak evidence for that claim, UCT's research grants rose 17% in 2024 and contracts rose about 30%. But more importantly, it's a claim that goes to the heart of the autonomy of the university, of scholarship, of what it means to be a scholar. Because you have to be independent of financial and vested interests. Not just in relation to Gaza, but in relation to all our research. We have to be able to apply our scholarship in ways that are not determined by rich and powerful. So when we have forces outside the university that are really intervening in the university's decision-making spaces, or when confidential discussions in the highest governing body of the university, we see it appear in the press, we see it spread all over the place, we know that there's a problem with governance. And that affects us as academics, as scholars, because we can't do the work when we have these financial guns held to our head. And if we don't resist it, then that signals the end of the university as we know it. If university decision-making processes can be pressured and bent, in this case to make exceptions for Israel, we no longer have academic autonomy. In the past, it was apartheid. It was how apartheid determined who could be taught when, what, and what you taught, and you were harassed if you taught material that was subversive. Now it's the generated fear of funding loss. And no matter how instrumental that those generated fears are, it's the bludgeon on the university to capitulate. That is the language of Donald Trump. That's the language of bullying and bluster. And it is being deployed, whether openly or subtly, in our South African academe. So what really has to happen is that the universities need to stand together against this. They need to unite, because if a Zionist funder can take funding from, conditional funding away from one university and take it somewhere else, but that university doesn't accept it because they agree that the academic mission can't be dictated by this, well, then the power of money to dictate what is taught and what is researched is defeated. So it's... So we haven't seen that from our academic leadership across South Africa, and that's a challenge to them. And just to close, in the course I teach, I use a video which is, I'll admit it's slightly cheesy, but it's a video about the origins of human rights, modern human rights, and the narrator provides a description of early civilizations where protection against brutal autocrats was non-existent. So as the narration goes, it says, if you were in with the right people, you were in, but if you were not in with the right people, and then it segues to an image of slavery and the sound of a whip cracking. In other words, it's bondage, it's brutality. And the video then takes us over time progressively to how human rights evolved and how there were protections built into the international system. But when we look at the world now, and we see how uncontained power and impunity are increasingly normalized, I see us reverting to that era where that whip cracked, you know, that era of brute power that is the determinant of who lives and who dies and how they die, if they are lucky enough to live longer. So if that's the case, then that's all the more urgent for us to be a university that provides thought leadership on social justice. That's what our mission says. That prepares our students to be global citizens. Gaza is our test, because as Francesca and Hassan Abu Sita have said, what is happening in Gaza is a dry run. It's a genocidal dry run for what will happen to other subaltern peoples. It is our test as academia to be fierce in using what we know to challenge that. It will not be a comfortable space, but no freedom was ever won without a struggle, as we know well in South Africa.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, colleagues. I'm going to ask Francesca just for a short 5-minute reflection on perhaps what she's heard, but also I'm sure she's described this as a test case in a way, a test for humanity, a political moment, and I'll invite her to say something more about that. I know you have many questions that are now in your minds, and I'm going to, after Francesca answers, hand over to Dr. Leah Naidu from the Department of Education, the Faculty of Education here at UCT, to facilitate the question and answer with yourselves. So thank you. Francesca.
Yeah, very briefly, probably two comments. The first is on the role of the universities. It's the same, not just in Western countries, but it has been the same pretty much everywhere. For a long time, Palestine has been a sort of prohibited subject. It didn't start in the last 2 years. I mean, before it was extremely complicated to host debates and to have space to discuss Palestine and to have Palestinian voices. So I think this is a betrayal to academic freedom already, and you have already abdicated as scholars. I mean, I'm talking to those who have done it, that function, that precious function and responsibility, which is to protect university as a sanctuary of free thinking, which is not sanitized thinking. People need to disagree, because this is a space for exercising all the tools that then students will use outside. So while silencing and sanitizing the space for the debate, you have betrayed, in fact, not only the institution, but the young generation that you are supposed to nurture. And I'm talking to scholars, but primarily to the management of any university. The other thing is that the repression of academic freedom, as the repression and the crushing of freedom of expression, is a method to control the people, what they think, how they express themselves. And it's incredible how universities are not just in the margins. Certain universities are not just in the margins, but they are part of the collapse of the fundamental values that have constituted the pillars of the so-called liberal democracies. Because universities have become places of obscurantism, where wherever you would say the word Palestine, there would be the fear of someone that, oh my God, this is anti-Semitic. No, this is not anti-Semitic. And it's obscene that even in universities, people have not had the courage to challenge those who had the audacity of calling anti-Semite, so misusing and abusing of the memory of those who have been the real victims of anti-Semitism, not just past, but recent and present, in order to silence the legitimate quest for justice. But this is even more serious when it's linked to money. To money, the fact that people can be shut up, can be silenced for money, it's something that should make all of us worried. And therefore, I think that the struggle is there like it's here. And it's all about, and it confirms the fact that that justice is always and will always remain an unfinished business.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Afternoon, everybody. While the mics get moved to the middle, we will ask our questions from. I wanted to say that I think Francesca has made us all brave. And in a way, we have many Francescas who you will meet later. We have many, many colleagues who've been working very hard, from students all the way up to council. But I also want to take this moment to acknowledge all of the people who've been working in big and small ways to build solidarity with Palestine. So I'm going to ask in this moment if our colleagues, comrades, friends who went on the global march, who confronted at the border the inability to cross over, our representatives from Cape Town to please stand up. Thank you. Having been inside an Israeli jail as part of the Women's Boat to Gaza almost 10 years ago, when I heard the reflection from colleagues who were on the ground going towards the border, it gave me a sense of how things have escalated, but also how people are willing to put their lives and selves on the line. But we don't all have the bravery to do all of that. So can I please ask those of you who are teachers, and in this moment, whether you teach at preschool, primary school, high school, if you have taught and refuse to be silent, please stand up for us. We need to support our teachers, academics, priests. Thank you, teachers. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Very importantly, even if you don't have the certification, I'm from adult and community education. If you are a parent, or an auntie or an uncle, or a grandparent, and you've decided to say something at the dinner table or in front of the TV, please stand up. Thank you. Francesca challenged us yesterday, the hard one for many of you, not for me. the Coca-Cola, the Cape Union Mart that everyone likes to shop at. If you have changed your purchasing patterns and encourage somebody else, stand up. The point is we've all stood up in some ways. The call from every colleague on the stage here has been that we need to stand up inside of the university and outside of it. Are we ready with the mics? Okay, we're ready for the questions. Can we please take a round of 3? And what we're going to do is, Francesca, you are not alone on the stage. There are many people willing to stand up, so people will direct it to you, but colleagues feel free to help when we need to. So where are those hands? Let me see a couple. Okay, I see some hands, so I'm gonna go over here, and I'm gonna give you a number I won't remember. So number 1, number 2, let me jump to the left, because we all should take a jump to the left. Okay, we've got Imtiaz there, 3. I've got a number 4 here, and a number 5, and then I'm gonna come around again. Can we please ask, we all want to hear the stage, so context to your question, but 2 to 3 minutes. My job is to try to hold time, and I'm gonna do that, so please, I apologize ahead of time if I have to give you a one finger up. So number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, please make your way to the queue. And then let's just do 5, 6, 7, 8 now already. So I've got 1 here. So who's last in that queue? 5? 6? Yo, my father's put up his hand, guys. What am I to do? Okay, Dad, you'll take 7. Can I have, oh, Reverend Rene is 8. 2 more. 9. Who's at the back there? Number 10. You are number 10. If you could make your way, but listen as you move, so that we have all 10. We're going to we see how difficult they are, and we'll jump back and forth. Please just introduce yourself, and then go ahead.
Okay. Hi, comrades. My name is Faria from UCT for Palestine and Cape Town Energy Embargo. And I want to ask a question, I think mainly to Professor Eid and Francesca. I think often there's an emphasis placed on nonviolent resistance, but I wonder the role of nonviolent resistance in the context of violent settler colonialism. So it's quite a short question, but perhaps some clarity on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Taking notes. Did you hear that? Okay.
There's an echo and my ears, you know the problem with my...
So Prof. Eid's ears from all the bombing are not in a good way, but Francesca's going to translate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm from a group called UCT Alumni for Palestine. Francesca Albanese, if you forgive the familiar address, you may know that in response to the ongoing genocide in Gaza, 3 structures at UCT, including its highest body, the Council, passed resolutions condemning the Gaza genocide and resolving to implement an academic boycott of Israel's defense force and to commit to rebuilding the Palestinian educational infrastructure on the day that it becomes possible. Since passing these resolutions, there have been ongoing attempts to undermine and rescind them at this university. A Zionist professor has launched a court case to attempt to declare the council resolution unlawful, and pro-Palestine donors have withdrawn their funding from UCT. Our group has twice written open letters to the Vice-Chancellor asking that UCT stands firmly behind these resolutions. The response has been equivocal. These struggles within the university continue. What has been the international, my question, what has been the international experience of similar struggles on university campuses around the world? Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3.
Alian, mine is not a question, it's a comment. Okay.
Go ahead. 2-minute comment.
Yeah. First, it's just an assessment or an evaluation, right? Congratulations on asking all the people to stand up who stood for the cause of Palestine. Congratulations to having these speakers here and bring Francesca here and say there's many like her. The simple rule is this, that for years we've been held ransom by fear, by withdrawal of money, and anti-Semitism. In the last 2 years, since 7 October 2023, we've seen how the narrative has changed. This hall wouldn't have been full like this today. It's full because of the efforts of all the small people, with one banner, one poster standing in the streets, going in the protest march, and changing the narrative, and people becoming brave. So people have become brave, more outspoken, because some have led the way. We've come very, very far. The minds have changed tremendously in this country and throughout the world. So the struggle carries on. So congratulations and thanks to everybody who spoke and everybody who followed. You know, we've done great in this country, and the fact that we went to the ICJ to set the standard where 70 countries then broke their fear to support us, and 30 countries in Colombia said, let's take sanctions against Israel. We had to break the fear, we had to break the money, and we had to break the thing, anti-Semitism. And we know anti-Semitism is used to shut you up. So if we stand up against Zionists, and they say you're anti-Semitic because they want to cover their faults, then I'm 5,000% anti-Semitic, to speak the truth. The most other important point is, which worries me, when people withdraw their money from a South African university, being South African, saying that you take a tax benefit to benefit the students of your country, but now you're withdrawing your money because you're an agent for a foreign government. That makes it a big problem for me. And to me, if you do that to threaten your students and your university because you're acting on the basis of Israel, I think you should be stripped of your citizenship and thrown out of the country. Thank you.
Absolutely. Before you ask your question, just to say, many of us have organized all our lives. People who organize in war zones, and when things fall apart, gift of the givers steps up. So thank you for stepping up. And who knew that our universities would become crisis zones, and we'd maybe need some people to come and help us with the funding. Please go ahead with your question.
Hi, my name is Catherine. My questions, there's 2 parts to my question. One is that Francesca is here as a representative of the United Nations. And my question is, in the weight of everything that's coming to light and international sentiment moving towards pro-Palestine, when are we going to see real action on the part of United Nations against Israel? When? And more than that, the question that I have been asking myself over the last couple of weeks is, how do we, at the level of the individual and the public, create real impetus for these sanctions against Israel? Like, that's also part of the UN. Like, when are countries going to step forward and impose diplomatic and economic and political and sports bans on Israel? Like, how do we move that?
Thank you. Last question for this round. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tarek. Thank you. Just want to take this opportunity to thank you, Francesca. Your reports were seminal I did a master's degree on the genocide in Gaza, and your reports were very central to why I managed to pass it, so thank you for that. And I did it at Trinity College in Dublin, so it was also quite helpful. Just a quick question. What impact did South Africa bringing the case to the ICJ have on your work and possibly the research that you did? Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll have the chance for answers. You don't mind standing a little bit? I'll stand with you. Francesca?
Okay. Look, I should probably leave the question on nonviolent resistance to you and take the question on the violent resistance, because eventually it was gathering applauses like if it's a contested issue that should be defended. No, look, armed resistance is protected under international law. It's protected and there is no question about that. I question though whether what is the relevance for us? Because while it's relevant for the Palestinians who are there, and so, yes, a people under oppression has the right to defend itself with all the available means, but within the respect of international law. What does it mean? That there are some limitations. You cannot kill civilians, you cannot target civilians, whatever the arguments are there. Like there is whatever justification, moral or immoral, from a legal point of view, you cannot touch a civilian unless the civilian has taken up arms against you. But again, this is not a conflict. It's an unlawful occupation. So we really need to reframe the discussion around what Palestinians have been allowed to do. So yes, of course, I've been taking much criticism and a lot of violence myself for reminding people of this. But having said that, I don't know, the question for you would be, do you think that you're going to succeed this through violent, not through violent, I don't like the word violent, because armed resistance, it's the use of force. But let's leave it without connotation. I do believe that what we can do is to use international law for once, because I don't think it has been used. And I will return and elaborate upon it when I get to the fifth question. But also, the Palestinians have been resisting non-violently for 30 years, and for 30 years they were not supported. There were not this global solidarity. There was a lot of rhetoric, but there was no action. The BDS now, it started to pick up for real because there is a genocide. But so this is a moment of introspection for all of us. So including, what have we done? Have we changed our level of involvement because we are involved? I mean, are we using Amazon? Are we using Google? Are we using Microsoft? Are we continue to use Airbnb and Booking.com? And don't look at my report, look at the BDS, because if the answer is yes, the problem is also you and me who cannot change our habits. But again, for me, nonviolent resistance remains the compliance with international law 2.0. Look, I think that you are best placed to take the question concerning university resolutions. But however, I've seen it happening in other places, that for each step forward, there is a tendency to push the movement 2 steps backward. But this is, I mean, if the system was not so rotten, if there were no pro-apartheid, pro-perpetual occupation and pro-genocide forces, Palestine would not have seen a genocide. So this is also an opportunity. Take it as a good thing that you can make some ethical decisions. You can see also who your non-friends are in your society. Because again, in order to have an apartheid-free Palestine, we really need to have an apartheid-free South Africa, an apartheid-free Italy, an apartheid-free Europe. Because apartheid lives in our mind. If we accept that it's okay to trade or to make business and to have partnership, including for research, with a state that it commits crimes as it breeds, then yes, we have to deal with we have to decolonize our mind, as Ustad Haidar teaches us. So again, I don't have concrete recommendations. I think that our colleagues, my colleagues are better placed than me in this respect, but this is normal. And when you have a pushback, you push forward more. This would be my 2 cents. I fully agree that the narrative has changed. And I would go as far as when Professor Edward Said moved to the United States, and he was saying, I even have to explain what does it mean being Palestinians, what is Palestine, and the Palestinians have been exceptionally good at making sure that their identity as a people, as a nation in exile, as a nation of orphans of a homeland, was effective and visible and active. So you have made all you could. It's us. We have been lagging behind, and now we are catching up with our societies. But yes, we need to see how far we have gone and not be naive. Of course, there will, as I was saying, of course there will be pushback. But because, as I was saying, and I will repeat myself, but repetita iuvant, the system is still corrupt. The system is still profiteering from the genocide and profiteering from the exploitation of a young generation here. When you are told, and as someone who comes from outside, I'm saying, I do see that this is the same narrative that has been spread among the Palestinians in order to defeat their spirit. When you are told that the anti-apartheid movement has failed you, that's not true. It's just that the apartheid didn't last 50 years. For 50 years, someone has called it apartheid, but it was 300 years of colonization which have scarred this land, and it takes a long time to get it out of your veins, out of your social DNA. And this is why it is to be a daily practice of Ubuntu, a daily practice of Sumud, and you need to make sure that these are not just words, that they belong to who you are as an individual. Of course it's an accomplished job, as it is, I tell my fellow Italians. The anti-fascism struggle. The moment you leave an atom of fascism resisting in your body, be ready for it to thrive again and to return. So this is why we need to be always alert to injustice, wherever it is. I want to answer the question, the fourth question that was, I'm not a representative of the United Nations. To be very, very clear, I'm not even paid by the United Nations for doing what I'm doing. I'm doing it because it makes sense right now. And it wouldn't make sense for me to just write my reports and let them get full of dust in the United Nations. Because in the United Nations, even the stones know about the Palestinians, the Palestinian injustice, the Palestinian question. Even the stones could, if they could speak, would tell you the story of the Nakba. And probably the stones would have more heart than generations and generations of diplomats who have crossed those august alleys. But when my sister asks me, when are we going to see action? It doesn't depend on the UN per se. It depends on all of us. Do we really think that the UN is like this transcendental entity that operates without the will of the states? No. The UN is the sum of every state sitting there, minus the influence of settler colonial forces that have not been uprooted yet. And this is why I keep on saying Palestine, like it or not, it's Palestine the real test toward a fully decolonized world. Because if today, after 2 years that nearly 2 years that South Africa has taken Israel to court, and it's immense what you have done. It's immense that the government, despite the pressure, has not retracted yet. It's amazing, but for 2 years, how many states has South Africa managed to mobilize against the most important legal case ever adjudicated by a court? The first and probably the only settler colonial genocide to ever see a judge. So this is immense, but look at the other countries in this continent. Where are they? Where are the other people who have broken the chains of colonialism? Probably the chains of colonialism are still there. So the answer is very simple. We are going to see sanctions against Israel the moment we will have truly and fully democratized the United Nations, I guess I want to say the United Nations, so that they reflect fully and entirely the promise we the people, because so far we are very, very far from this, but we are still there to bring a victory home.
Thank you.
Reading South African literature. Is it? Oh, sorry. You know, my ears, I'm sorry about that. Reading South African literature, political literature in particular, I mean, we've learned before issuing our first call for academic and cultural boycott of Israel in 2004, we read that South African resistance relied heavily on what you called 4 pillars of struggle. 4 pillars of struggle, the armed struggle, the underground struggle, the mass mobilization, and a global solidarity campaign based on boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Then we looked at the first call made by a handful of South African activists in the late 50s, calling on the international community to boycott the apartheid regime until it complies with international law. It took the international community more than 30 years to heed the call made by the oppressed of South Africans. Those who were born in the 60s and 70s remember what Margaret Thatcher had to say about Nelson Mandela in 1986, I think. She said that Nelson Mandela is a terrorist. 1987, Ronald Reagan said the ANC is a terrorist organization. And now everybody thinks that, rightly so, that Nelson Mandela was, he has become an icon. We looked at that, we looked at our own history. 1936, we had the 6 months revolution in Palestine. It was based on boycotting British goods and products of Israeli settlements at the time. Or rather, they were not called Israeli settlements, they were called Jewish settlements, because Israel was established in 1948. But then move forward to 1987, and I was there in Palestine, and I played a role in the first Intifada. And the first Intifada was a non-violent Intifada uprising, of course, completely non-violent. And then in 2004, we decided, a group of academics, cultural figures, artists, etc., to call on international universities and cultural institutions to boycott Israeli academic institutions due to their complicity in Israel's multi-tiered system of oppression. Israel's military occupation of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, which is violent. Israel's apartheid against the second, and if not third-class citizens of Israel itself, Palestinian citizens of the State of Israel. And then, of course, settler colonialism. We've tried, what I want to say is that we've tried everything. I took part in the Great March of Return, 2017, and I saw Israeli soldiers sniping Palestinian children. For 3 years, every single Friday, I would go to the fence separating Gaza from Israel. And I remember very well, on the 15th of May, 2018, 60 people were killed within an hour. And we were protesting non-violently. And what was the reaction of apartheid Israel? I mean, using F-16, using F-15, using Merkava tanks. Now, my question, did the apartheid regime ever use F-16s to attack townships in South Africa? Never. Tanks to attack townships in South Africa? Never. And then we were blamed. And we were blamed. And this is the context within which the 7th of October took place, by the way. So we've tried everything: nonviolence, armed resistance, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, which leads me to the second question about universities. The ACBI, Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel, which was issued in 2004, before the global BDS call 2005, has been endorsed by all Palestinian academic institutions, including the Council of Higher Education. Council of Higher Education, we have all Palestinian presidents of Palestinian universities represented on the Council of Education and the Minister of Education. In other words, we have a consensus amongst our academics to boycott Israeli academic institutions. Now the question is, people who support Palestine say that, they always ask us, what do you want? It's very clear, we want you to boycott apartheid Israel, because the power of the power imbalance is huge between the oppression and the oppressed. Israel has, according to some studies, the 4th strongest army in the world, equipped with Merkava tanks, F-15, F-16, and more than 250 nuclear heads. What do Palestinians have? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. And when it comes to the 7th of October, because this is what always people refer to as if history on earth started on the 7th of October 2023. But let's think about it. It is said that the youngsters who attacked the Israeli settlements, Sderot, etc., were the sons and grandsons and daughters of refugees from the village of Houj. The village of Houj became the Sderot settlement on the other side of the fence. They were born after 1967, grew up under a hermetic medieval siege. They tried everything: boycott, Great March of Return. And what's the reaction of the international community? Absolutely nothing. So I think now, the last point, what we need is more solidarity. We don't need sympathy. We don't need sympathy. We need solidarity. Solidarity means you have to stand hand in hand with the oppressed of Palestine. Thank you.
I'm having a lot more sympathy with my colleague Suren here, because how do we stop anyone? It's an impossibility to stop you from speaking. So thank you for speaking, for taking the time to answer. We're going to decolonize time potentially, although Francesca's work doesn't stop here. She's got a meeting, live interview, and so on. So we will be working with time. I'm asking the line of people to be brief. And then, Francesca, you don't have to answer all of them if you, depending. And I'm going to give the colleagues a little bit to also come in, and then we'll close afterwards. So, last round of questions. Please keep them tight. Dad. This is not a dinner conversation. It's not on? The mic's not on?
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Good afternoon all. Firstly, I have a comment and a question. I want to thank the panel, courageous panel, who are taking a stand. It's an inspiration to all of us liberation fighters, I'm sure, all over the world. The comment I wanted to make is that for me, cutthroat competition, excessive greed, and capitalist relations is the law of the jungle, and we've entered that jungle now. If you look up in Africa, if you look all over the world, India, we enter that jungle. Solidarity and cooperation is the law of civilization, and the civilized are here today in solidarity with Palestine. My question is this. History has repeated itself a lot in Palestine. It seems that Mossad and Netanyahu, to divide the PLO, secretly sent funds to Hamas and even secretly allowed arms to take place to create a fight, an engineer fight within the Palestine and Hamas. And people were killed, we know this. But more insidious now, there are camps where I call them Palestinian Judases, who are former people that have smuggled criminals who are on the Palestinian side in camps being armed to fight. And they call for Hamas to lay down their arms. Might be a very dangerous consideration. Does anybody have in the panel any information about the numbers in these camps? They're on the Israeli side, protected by the Israeli army. And I think it's important this issue becomes a public issue, because we are making lots of noise about the collaborators that have been killed in Palestine, like in Algeria, the collaborators in the rest of the world. But this part of the story is not being told. So I think it's important for that kind of information to be shared. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. My name is Malaika Ngwenya. I'm a law student at Stellenbosch University. Stellenbosch is actually where apartheid was conceived. And it's no surprise that it is the university that is not taking a stance. This university does not care about a genocide, it does not care about apartheid. Stellenbosch University is complicit in genocide, and I say this as a Stellenbosch University student. I suppose my question stems from that. How do we make the oppressor uncomfortable? Because the oppressor thrives in comfort. I've seen in our institution that the people who are protected are the people of a particular demographic and who bring in a particular type of funding. So when I look at just the general world, when we look at the Trumps and the Netanyahu, how do we isolate the oppressor? Because the cycle keeps happening. I understand boycotting and everything, but how do we isolate them? And yeah, that was just my question. Thank you.
Evening, thank you. Also, thank you to all of the panel for being here tonight. My name is Kelly Harden, and I'm just wondering if you foresee any future in which the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation faces prosecution for the crimes it committed in Gaza under the guise of healthcare and aid.
Thank you. That's the second question around that issue.
Good afternoon, everybody. You greeted us in a number of beautiful official languages, but just in the language of Sarah Bartman, which is what this hall is named after. In Khoikhoi Wabu, we would say, "Kai Ches." And I'm very happy to teach you that as well. Amazon Web Services, which in your report has been firmly condemned for its complicity in the automated weaponry systems that have underpinned this accelerated catalytic genocidal series of events, including the whole trope of giant tech. Amazon Web Services African headquarters has built itself on an epicenter of liberation and resistance here in Cape Town that is significant to the San and Khoi, but is also a composite understanding of how a settler colonial state emerged in this country, about the issues of genocide and of apartheid. My question is, how do we make the intangible enemy of giant tech more visible? The South African government has contracts with Checkpoint, an Israeli-based IT firm, and controls the South African Police Service, the Treasury, the Presidency, the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries. And in this province alone, multi-billion rand contracts with Amazon Web Services. The extent to which these entities, as you know, have contracts with MI5, MI6, the Pentagon, the US military, and really are the combustion engines of the genocide. How do we focus more strongly on making more tangible this intangible idea of genocide tech?
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Renee. I was asked to keep this brief. I'll do the best I can. Kenneth Halstead talks about when a solution of yesterday becomes a problem of today. Universities was a solution to how are we going to educate the nation. And now it seems like we're trying to solve the university problem instead of asking the question, what's the best way to educate our nation? Our country has a story of the Robben Island University. People sentenced to Robben Island, and people got matric certificates, diplomas, all kinds of forms of education with a slogan, each one, teach one. And so there were no funds, there was no fees, there were no lecturers, there were no classrooms. Education happened in a very different way. What are we imagining universities could be outside of the need for funding? Because if we don't begin to ask that question, then we will remain a victim of the idol of capital. And I think of what's been said about universities, but the absence of the conversation about UWC, the University of the Western, the struggle University of the Western Cape has completely divested. Completely. And so my question is, how do we reimagine education that can also provide solidarity for universities like the Western Cape, for students at the Western Cape, for people who are educational professionals at the Western Cape University? Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Sadullah Kajika. I'm actually an academic at Stellenbosch University, and I somewhat hang my head in shame. But it relates to the previous person's point. If University of Cape Town is concerned about funders, etc., and it's the premier university on this continent, how do we respond? And in South Africa, we are very fortunate. We've got a Bill of Rights which enshrines academic freedom under Section 16, freedom of expression. And I don't think we're taking it seriously as academics, seriously enough. The University of Stellenbosch has just passed a new conflicts of interest policy, which I believe is problematically wide and could be weaponized to silence or to self-censor because it defines prejudice, and we know what prejudice means today. It means money. And my question to maybe Professor London is, why don't all South African universities issue a collective statement saying that funders cannot and are not allowed to curb academic freedom at universities.
Well, remember that this is where that question came from, and we all have to take that forward. The last question needs to be almost the shortest one.
Thank you. My name is Terry Crawford Brown. I used to be an international banker. President Nelson Mandela acknowledged that New York sanctions, the banking sanctions campaign, launched by Archbishop Tutu, Dr. Bears Nadir, and myself in October 1985, was the single most effective strategy in overcoming apartheid, in breaking down apartheid. We targeted the 7 major New York banks because of the role of the US dollar as settlement currency in international transactions. The Comprehensive Anti-Apartheid Act followed in October 1986 and was followed when President Reagan attempted to vote against it, but his vote was overturned by the US Senate. And it was widely acknowledged by 1989 that banking sanctions was where the apartheid government was most vulnerable. Following a UN sanctions campaign conference in Geneva in September 1989, the UN established the 30th of June 1990 as the deadline to abolish apartheid. In turn, the US government, in October 1989, issued an ultimatum that failing A, the end of the state of emergency, B, the release of Nelson Mandela and political prisoners, and C, the beginning of constitutional negotiations, the US would prohibit all South African financial transactions in the United States. That became the background to President de Klerk's speech on the 2nd of February 1990 and the consequences that followed.
The question.
My point is...
Yeah. Point or question?
Yeah. My point is swift sanctions in Brussels have now replaced New York. Brussels is the pressure point. And swift sanctions against Israeli, every bank has a SWIFT code. The letters IL identify the Israeli banks. What is needed is a simple computer program to suspend transactions to and from IL Israeli banks.
Thank you. We got the next campaign. Thank you so much, Terry. We have to move. We've got 2 campaigns coming out of this meeting. That one is a very good one as well. Swift code. Let's intervene. Let's use the algorithm against the machine. So we are running behind time, as you can imagine. We're going to start with Leslie and ask for 2-3 minutes. Nomusa as well, Haidar, and then Francesca, I beg you to choose so we can move.
Okay, I'll be quick. So I'll respond to an earlier comment made by Eugene about what's the international experience, and obviously we can't easily respond to it, but it struck me that in the South, we have an opportunity to share something that will benefit people in the North. We're so tired, we're so used to getting knowledge and money and funding from the North. We can actually teach people in the North how to resist their institutions, and we should do that. So, as for Dr. Kajika and getting our universities to agree, I totally agree, and please speak to me after this meeting. We will get UCT, Stellenbosch, CPUT, UWC to start this with, University of South Africa. And I don't see why we shouldn't push for that. And that is, thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should resist co-option. It's so easy to be co-opted. Our activists, our struggle heroes, so easy to get co-opted. Look what happened to South Africa. Where are they now? And I think that that's the thing to be cautious about, to be aware of all the time. But also agreed on the point of Stellenbosch. Stellenbosch actually, if you look at the degrees that Stellenbosch traditionally offers, most of those degrees were actually meant for the mining industry, the engineers. It's all in the sort of sciences. It was actually aimed for reinforcing that South Africa-Israeli relationship. So yeah, I mean, I thank you for raising that point, and agree that we need a much stronger force of universities boycotting.
I will be very brief, in fact, yeah. I will be very, very brief, yeah. How to isolate Israel? Well, the first point is, why does post-apartheid South Africa still have diplomatic ties with apartheidism? And I think it's, you know, it's really shameful. I mean, honestly, I mean, after all you went through in South Africa here, you wanted the international community to boycott the inhumane apartheid regime. And after you got your freedom in 1994 with the election of Nelson Mandela as the first black president of multiracial, multicultural South Africa, so why is the South African flag still fluttering in the skies of Tel Aviv? These are the questions that we keep asking. And then politically speaking, honestly, and I know that I shouldn't be saying this, I strongly believe that the two-state solution is a racist solution par excellence. I definitely don't expect Francesca to comment on the one or two-state solution, etc. But, well, it's up to us, of course, Palestinians, to tell you what we exactly want. But even if you still support a racist solution, and if you still that you have to be realistic and to be pragmatic, and Israel would never accept, you know, the one-state solution, at least, you know, look at the demands made by the BDS movement. What we want is our fundamental rights under international law. One, we want the withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip and the West Bank in accordance with international law. Two, and this is the most important demand, implementation of United Nations Resolution 194, which calls for right of return of all Palestinian refugees. I mean, we don't have to listen to the political elite in Palestine or the international, no. I mean, we are talking about basic rights. And basic right number 3 is end of apartheid. And then when I remember, I mean, this is the last point now. I remember once, you know, I was giving a talk, I think it was in Scotland. And, you know, we had a full house like this. And then we had the Q&A. A rabbi stood up. He said, I support your right for freedom in 1967 eras. I support your right of return, but how dare you ask for equality, because that means the end of Israel as a state. And what we are saying, no, we are not calling for the end of Israel. We are calling for the end of apartheid. We are calling for the end of settler colonialism. We are calling for the end of occupation. Thank you so much.
I have 5 very brief comments, and I want to stay within 1.5 minutes. So the first is that we need an alliance of bankers against apartheid. So I think the coordinator is already in the room. Second, will we ever see the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation held accountable? Absolutely, absolutely. But for this, we need to work. And we need to, for this, we need a lot of good lawyers eager to do good work pro bono. The third thing, there are many good lawyers willing to do good work pro bono. Yeah, and the third thing is that I think that we need to break the borders in our mind. Decolonizing the mind is also imagining a way of doing things that we have not done yet. We need to understand that this system is or looks like a global apartheid, because someone was mentioning the foreign agents. It's not foreign agents, it's an alliance that is transnational, and they protect each other, because this is how they make profits, and this is how the settler colonialism has rooted, and this is how it hides but continue to thrive. So the other thing is, the fourth thing is, has the ICJ case that South Africa initiated impacted my work? Absolutely, but not just my work. It has made history already. It's just that we need more countries and more people making sense of that history and continue to write that history in a successful way, because we have the norms, we have the standards, and we have enforcement mechanisms that, as this state demonstrate, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and when they don't, they must be held accountable. So the last point is, how do we fight a global apartheid with a global movement that needs a goal? And the goal is clear: end according to international law, and make the genocide accountable, then end the apartheid, withdrawing the troops, dismantle the colonies, and Israel must stop exploiting Palestinian resources, and then the justice for 1967 and 1947 onward, and then apartheid from the river to the sea, and then they will decide what kind of state they want. But the last thing is that we need to explore the justiciability of rights. When the university continues to maintain partnerships with universities that are complicit in crimes, well, they are violating their own ethical guidelines and commitments, their own principles, like businesses are violating the principle regulating businesses and human rights. Therefore, they must be held accountable. I mean, either you can change university, which might not super practical, but also you can bring relate and make networks with other universities, because there is the not only trials in court, but the trials of people who bring shame and ruin the reputation of the universities that so much need it. Thank you so much.
We really need more time, but before we continue, we stop right here and now to say thank you. I want to call up the two Cape Townians who were on the global Sumut flotilla to please come forward. Dr. Fatima Hendricks and Bashir Asuma. Thank you so much. This side. On your left, you will see two beautiful artworks. The first, the big one, donated kindly by Tanya Peterson, who is in Cape Town. Can we give Tanya a great big hand? Francesca, someone's going to have to send all the gifts home to you, so these are coming your way. These two artworks are going to be gifted to you. The big one first. We'll sort out the logistics, don't worry. Don't worry.
Do you read my mind?
So one donated by a wonderful artist and comrade from Cape Town, who hopefully you will meet a little bit later. The second, called Joy of Jazz, a picture of Miriam Makeba, who you know. This one, not donated, but bought by donations from the academics at the University of Cape Town for you. Thank you. And then this is not only a thanks, but it is also, we had a debate, is it a peace prize? These two radical comrades on my left said, no, it's a prize of liberation, not peace. So we'll have to debate it going forward, but this is our gift to you as part of a peace liberation prize that you deserve, that comes from Cape Town, that you will take with you. and donate or keep, as you mentioned yesterday, you will decide. You are collecting the gifts of the world as you go along and do the work that you do. So we pass this on to you, and Fatima's going to say a few words. You won't be able to pick them up, they're too heavy. But we've heard you are also a kind hugger, and so there will be a moment for you to hug these wonderful, radical comrades as part of the gift.
Tunisia. Oh, Molweni, Molo, Francesca. Francesca, you are the people's rose. Your honorable name that means the free one, freedom, echoes the radical love of Ubuntu and hope across the turbulent seas, the rolling lands, the mountains and the valleys, and the fresh air we breathe. Oh, Francesca, you are the people's red rose in the gardens of resistance, adorned with the delicate petals of beauty and of love, and the rosy thorns of guardianship and sumud, risen from the soil of the orchards of Italy to the orchards of beauty in Palestine, and the human family of the world's vast lands and seas. Oh, Francesca, the people salute you. Siyabonga kakulu. Aluta continua. Francesca freedom, Francesca freedom. Freedom Palestine, Francesca Palestine, Francesca Palestine, Francesca Palestine. Amandla! 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 Awetu!
First, the hugs.
Wait. I have to say something. We kind of did that wrong, Francesca. The hug. I've got to show you. It's heart to heart. So we're going to start with the heart. Okay. There we go.
These wonderful comrades were on the Sumud flotilla on our behalf. Thank you.
I feel really, really overwhelmed. Thank you so much. And I had to get to this point of my life to realize that not even hugging, it's something that I had learned properly. So thank you so much. But just to end on a positive note, I think this is my coping mechanism. When I feel overwhelmed, I say something that sounds completely silly, but in order not to cry. But this, I think it's funny. By listening to you, I was thinking how humiliated would have been my husband had he been sitting there knowing that on the way out I would have told me, "You have never written to me anything so beautiful and poetic." Thank you.
For very important closing remarks and thanks, can I please welcome and ask Dr. Mbongiseni Buthelezi, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, who made a lot of this possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. After this inspiring evening, I'm tempted to say something that will make me never be invited here again.
Do it.
We've kept you here for too long, so let me be brief. I had a lot of things to say. I'll say only a few of them. So, first thing is that the last time I was in this building, it was still called Jamison Hall. And I'm thrilled to be back here when it is now called Sarah Bartman Hall. I think that's important. I was last year in this building as a staff member of this university. And the change that has happened, I think, reminds us that change is possible. That the ongoing work of decolonization continues long after we thought we'd gained our freedom, and that it is possible for Palestine to also get to that point of liberation because the work needs to be done. The second thing I want to say, and this is what I'm going to end on now, is to ask us to look at these banners behind us. And I'm just going to read what it says, both on the banner of the University of Cape Town and then on the Nelson Mandela Foundation's banner, and then ask us a question. UCT banner says, unleash human potential for a fair and just society. Fair and just society. The Nelson Mandela Foundation one says, mobilizing Nelson Mandela's legacy to build just societies. And I want to ask us this question. Are we doing this, what we put in words on banners? Or are our banners simply displays of words we don't live by? Are our institutions being hypocritical? Is the word I heard being used. And so, I think we've heard tonight that we need to push our institutions. We need to get them to do something collective, to move the dial. So with those words, I want to say thank you. And my first thanks is to all of you for being here tonight. I want to say thank you to the panelists. I'm not going to name them by name now in the interest of time. And I want to say thank you to the University of Cape Town for partnering with us to make this event happen, even though it almost did not happen on campus. Lastly, I also want to say, from the Nelson Mandela Foundation, we've said what we want to do in the next phase is to make good trouble. And that comes from the injunction Madiba himself gave the foundation. He said, the foundation's mandate as he stepped away from public life is to champion the cause of peace, democracy, and human rights. And in this phase, we think, borrowing from the great American civil rights leader, John Lewis, we need good troublemakers. And that is what we would like to do as the foundation. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
It is true that often leaders are meant to pull us along. It is also true that sometimes we need to pull our leaders along. Can we please invite the Chair of Council, Advocate Norman Arendse, to say a few words in thanks.
Sure. Good evening, colleagues, comrades, friends. Assalamu alaikum. Mulweni. Dumilang. Welcome especially to Francesca and Haidar, and our panelists for gracing us here this evening in this iconic hall. Someone should have by now mentioned to you what historic significance Sarah Baartman holds for all of us. She represents all the things that you fought for, that you struggled for. Humiliation, degradation, forced removal, discrimination, gender-based violence. She was removed from Cape Town a few centuries ago to be on display in Paris. Her remains were brought back here. I think the Nelson Mandela Foundation played a key role in ensuring a return. And it took UCT far too long to rename this hall the Sarah Baartman Hall, but fortunately it has happened. We are so happy, Francesca especially, for being our conscience, the global conscience, for many months as we watched the genocide unfold on TV. We watched it live. So we are grateful to you. I think, Bongiseli, you spoke about democracy. We sit on a UCT council, and all our different constituencies are represented on that council. You take a decision, a democratic decision, the highest decision-making body at this university, that binds everybody from the VC down to the lowest paid worker here at this university. But is it like that? No. People on council, they unsuccessfully try to challenge the Gaza resolutions. Several times they fail. And then they get a third-party proxy, someone who works here at this university, to take us to court. Unfortunately, I haven't been to court because I also do other stuff. like challenging people in parliament. But seriously, the reports look good. It looks like we're going to prevail and that the Gaza resolutions will stand. And just lastly, I want to say 67% of the university's general operating budget goes towards salaries, which is unacceptably high by anybody's standards. But where does that funding come from? It comes from the government, the state, and student fees, not from donors. But yet, I sit on council. I was appointed, big deal, by the minister with 4 other people to sit on council. I didn't get a phone call from the minister. I didn't get a phone call from the president or anybody in the government to tell me, you must do this, you must do that. Neither did the students protest in front of a meeting like they've done before to tell us what to do. We took the decision because of what is at the back of you. We want a just society, an equal society, free of discrimination. And that is what motivated the resolution to adopt the Gaza resolutions. So we sit in a really ironic situation where under apartheid, when the government interfered right here at this University of Cape Town, and we had our predecessors at the time standing for academic freedom, free of government interference. We're now in a democracy, but yet donors want to influence the way we conduct our business, which is unacceptable and wrong. So Francesca, and I want to thank the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Mbongi. I think I got an email probably about 6 weeks ago already to ask us to host this event. And I want to thank them for standing their ground because it was almost moved. And I'm just so happy that it was here, and I want to thank everybody and thank all of you for being here this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the leadership that stand firm. So this feels to me like a meeting that is not simply about a talk shop. There were at least 4 campaigns suggested. This thing is being recorded not to take up space somewhere. If you don't remember what the 5 campaigns were, please go and see. Make sure you get involved in these campaigns. We had just briefly a unified BDS or boycott campaign at universities in South Africa, the SWIFT code possibility, closing our embassies, the right of return, as Prof. Eid said, which is our basic right, and there were a few more that got put on the table. Yes, we're going to look at the recording. Can we end with some strong vocal commitment? Parenzee racism, Parenzee. Parenzee sexism, Parenzee. Parenzee homophobia, Parenzee. Parenzee capitalism, Parenzee. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine.